Hey everyone, my name is Annika and I'm a senior here. And I've been studying Latin for 5 years through the AP level, and I started studying in 7th grade in the Williston Middle School. So in the middle school, we would read these small novellas. They were written in Latin, and we'd read them in class just to have something new. And they could be about anything from the life of a gladiator to a retelling of a common myth to a account of the daily life of a Roman child. And in addition to being a great way to really go into depth with Roman culture and lifestyle in a way you couldn't from a textbook, these little novellas were excellent ways to expand your vocabulary or look at new grammatical constructions or gain some more practical translation skills. And they were also just fun to read. And you also got the sense of satisfaction in yourself once you finished reading one of these books, how you just took this knowledge that you learned in the classroom and applied it to something more tangible and real life feeling, which was super exciting for a Latin student. And so in my scholars project, Hippolyta and the Hero, I wanted to recreate this experience I had in middle school and write a short novella written in Latin of my own. So the story I'm adapting is the story of Hippolyta and her encounters with Hercules as part of his ninth labor. And this is a story that hasn't been retold in any kind of media like this, so I wanted to represent it and share it. So through my project, I've had a focus on the accessibility element of the piece and trying to make sure that the translation part is easy enough that any level of Latin student can have an attempt at it and give it a shot. So I'll talk a bit about the features here. So it's a short novella written with simple sentence structure and repeating vocabulary. So you could think of it a bit like the early reader books that you used to read when you were a child. And then after that, there is an English translation included for reference. So that's the storyboard that I worked off of in my translating process. And I kept that in there to provide context and to help students with any translation issues they might be having and they want to refer to this. And then the last part is the glossary. So it's a complete alphabetized glossary. Of every word I use in my novella, no matter how simple, it includes the case, the conjugation, and the translation of each word. So if you are unfamiliar with a word or exactly how it's being used in this particular conjugation or how to translate it in this declension, the glossary is there for you to refer to as you're translating for any issues like that. So even if you don't know, for example, a declension used in my novella, you're still able to access the English translation. Okay, so before I talk more about the actual novella, I'm going to give you a preview of the myth itself. So this guy right here, you probably have heard of him. He's Hercules. He was assigned by King Eurystheus to complete 12 labors in penance for his misdeeds. And stealing the belt of Hippolyta was his ninth labor. Hippolyta is this woman right here. She was the queen of this group of female warriors called the Amazons. And the Amazons, they lived by themselves, no interactions with men or anything. They did their own thing. They were very warlike people. But yeah, so Hippolyta had this belt. She was very proud of it. It was given to her by her father, Mars. And it was Hercules' task to go in there and take it. And so in many renditions of this story, Hercules is often painted as the hero. And looking at it through the lens that I've looked at with a lot of other classical Latin pieces through the years, Hercules just doesn't appear to really be a hero in this story. He goes in here and he attacks these people who hadn't provoked him. He kills people, he takes their items and leaves. That's not really a heroic behavior. So in my project, I wanted to retell this story more from Hippolyta's narrative and her viewpoint as opposed to focusing on Hercules and his so-called heroic actions. Okay, so I'm going to read the first 3 paragraphs of my novella. We'll be reading the Latin part, and it's written there in English, so that's what I translated off of, so you can follow along there. Mihi nomen est Hippolyta, sum bellatrix et Amazonam regina, sum filium Martis Deus belli. Mihi Baltium dederat, quod sum bellatrix maxima. Sum iantissimus propter Baltium, et in eo mea armagero. This is a bust of Mars, Hippolyta's father. Amazones per flumen Thermodon habitant. I'm just going to break right here. So this is a map of Turkey, and the Thermodon River, which is a reference, is actually a real place, and it is somewhere right up in there in Turkey. So it is a real river that does exist. Sumus bellatrix, sumus maximae fortissimae bellatrix. Viros in nostrum patriam non recipimus. Nostras filias appungent exercemus. Nostros filios relinquimus. In nostra patria, cum periculosus armis exercemus. Gladios et tela et arcus habemus. Equitare et carrere et pugnare exercemus. Bello exercemus. This paragraph in particular I feel is a great example of like the repeating words, simple sentence structure I tried to incorporate, like with the repetition of exercemus and then sentence structure like gladios et tela et arcus. And here's a demonstration of the glossary and how it can be used to aid the translation part. So here's the first paragraph here. And let's say you were reading data rot. You weren't quite sure what that meant, how to translate it. You could go into the glossary under D. You can see it's from the infinitive verb dare, to give. And then data rot is there, translated as he, she, it gave. And same for Baltium. Under B, from Baltium, belt. And in this case, from context, you would know it is Baltium, the belt, direct object. Here's some sources I've used. William Whitaker's Words is a vocabulary website database, incredibly helpful. And I'll talk some more about the process now. So the research phase of my project was very short, as you can see from these two sources I have here. The main part of that was just I needed to get an idea of what the myth was about, enough that I could write my own English storyline that I then translated into Latin. And for the translation process was actually a lot of fun. It wasn't too time-consuming, too difficult. There were definitely some things like remembering some personal pronouns and how this conjugation was translated that were a bit rusty. But my mentor, Ms. Cody, did a great job helping me through all of that. Thank you. And it all worked out just fine. And then the glossary. So from the start, I knew I wanted to include this glossary element of the project. But it quickly grew to be very large and very detailed, but I am extremely happy with how it turned out. It was definitely time-consuming to make. It's like, how many pages? I think it's 10 pages long. But it's, I feel it really adds to the accessibility part of the project. It is an essential part of making sure that this is a book that anyone can try and read. And in closing, I just have some thoughts I want to share. So usually in all of my Latin classes that I've taken, we're more focused on the translating Latin to English side. And I never really before gotten the chance to work backwards, taking English and then translating it into Latin. And certainly nothing ever of this magnitude. And so that was a really interesting process for me. Just even like constructing like with sentence structure, I had to make sure I go back and put all my verbs at the end and mix everything around appropriately so it simulated actual Latin, which was really fun. And when I started out with this idea of writing a novella, I thought, oh, it won't be too difficult, like I'm writing super simple sentence structures. But I actually found that making something simpler is a challenge in itself. That I was so used to taking these like eloquent sentences and like advanced grammatical constructions that I just couldn't apply to a project like this. And I had to learn how to take myself back to square one and remember how to apply all these earlier level strategies I'd used in a way that was a comprehensive and efficient manner of conveying my ideas. And I have a lot of respect now for the authors of these little novellas I used to read because it is difficult to make something that everyone can read. And I want to give one final shout out to Ms. Cody because she's been amazing as a mentor through this project. And thank you also to Ms. Kokoska for helping me with all the classroom sides of everything. And thank you all for listening. Any questions? Yes?
In your novella, what was Hippolyta's reaction when Hercules showed up and stole her belt?
Oh, well, I wasn't going to share this part. It's a bit of a downer here, but Hercules actually kills Hippolyta. They fight for a very long time. She is killed in battle, and Hercules runs off with the belt, which is also another reason I thought, oh, this isn't really a hero action here. Yes?
Is there any way we can find the whole story? Because it sounds really interesting.
Oh, yeah. So I'm actually sent the final project to Ms. Cody, and I think she was planning to share it with your class. So, yeah, you'll get a chance to look at it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Cody?
I was so interested that you chose the story of Hippolyta. One of the great things that these novellas can do, I find, in classes is to create a bigger lens to look at women in the ancient world, at non-Romans, at people who are not usually centered in Roman stories, and perhaps introduce a more modern social justice element into a very traditional patriarchal world. You had a challenge of dealing with a story where there's a really strong woman character, but she loses. How did you tackle that to try to maintain sort of her dignity and make her a story of female vitality?
So in the full project, I'll actually give a brief overview now that the secret's out that Hippolyta dies here. It's okay. So they're all living peacefully, like you've read in the first 3 paragraphs. Hercules comes in, kills Hippolyta, and takes the belt, and so her Amazons mourn her, and she goes to Elysium, which is kind of like the paradise of the underworld, you could think about it. And from there, she watches similar events like these happen, but she also sees actions of real heroes and actions taken to prevent things like this from happening again, and she feels very content and happy with how these people are trying to mitigate things like this. And that was the best twist I could put on it. So
That's wonderful, yeah.
it is a bit of a tragedy.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, what do you think is the message behind your novella, and how would the message change if you switch the perspective to a female perspective?
I think the message behind really the greater idea I had going into this is that you need to look critically at who you're thinking is the hero of a piece, and that it's not always the person who does the flashiest things or is the strongest or has always been portrayed for centuries as the hero. And that's really what I needed to keep in mind as I was working through this project. Yep.
Was there anything that surprised you when you started researching your project?
How little there actually was on this myth. Compared to a lot, there's just not many sources out there. Like, these 2 are really the best ones that Ms. Cody and I could find, which was surprising, as it is like Hercules is a fairly well-known fellow and everything, but this part of him just wasn't represented much out there.
I was just preparing.
Oh.